Well, thanks, Arthur, for joining me today. And we're here with Arthur Drooker, and we are going to talk about his new book of photography. Is that coming through? There it is. Yeah. Twilight. Arthur, you've done a bunch of photography books. What number is this one?
This is, I think it's 6 or 7 at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Yeah. Because I looked through here and I noticed a number of the photographs are dated, and some of these go back a few years, so they're not. You didn't all just shoot these last week or
Correct.
whatever. They've been going. But anyway, this is Twilight. Tell me a little bit about Twilight. Why did you pick a subject like that to start with?
Since I was a teenager, Twilight has always been the most captivating time of day to me. I know a lot of people like sunsets, but for me, honestly, sunsets are the opening act. Twilight is way more interesting. I just love the colors and how they fade in the sky. So it's not just how they look, but it's also the feeling you get from looking at the sky at that particular time.
Yeah. I'm gonna flip. I hope these come through. Here.
Yeah.
That comes through. Okay. That's one of the first ones in the book, and there's some commonality in that they're all these what I'd call they're abstractions in a way.
Yes.
They're not big landscape. A lot of your work is landscapes or big picture type of stuff, but these are very abstract. Is that a good word? Can I call this?
Yes, definitely.
Can I call that an abstraction? Well, what drove you this way?
You may. Well, the thing is, when I started the series, at the end of 2019, right around Thanksgiving, 2019. And at first, because I'm used to photographing in sharp focus, I would photograph Twilight in sharp focus. But when I would see the results, it looked like, it looks like I could see that looking out the window. Who cares? So one evening, I thought, I'm going to go the other way and photograph in soft focus. And that was one of the most profound aha moments I've had as a photographer, because everything that was sharp, the clouds, everything that was in the sky, all of a sudden goes soft. So clouds become soft bands of color, abstract.
Yeah.
And it was as if I mentioned this in the introduction to the book, that moment, it was as if I crossed over into some secret realm of color and light that was always there, but I had just found out about it. And,
right.
And that moment, like I say, was an aha moment. And that was the moment this series Twilight began.
Yeah, excellent. These photographs, you're right, that the clouds in the sky are just these bands of color, and you see, I'm looking at one right now that is orangish, and then it moves into a yellowish, and then eventually it just bleeds into the dark blue sky above. So there's a transition between the colors, which I suppose is always there in a twilight. There's not necessarily, well, there can be sharp edges, but you've kind of, this leads the eye to kind of look up and down and see these colors kind of flowing into each other.
Yes, and in that way, I guess one could say it is similar to abstract painting. I know if I had $1 for every time someone said to me after looking at this work, said, "God, these look like Rothkos," I could buy a Rothko.
Yeah.
That was not, but I have to admit, I know about Rothko. I admire Rothko. I love his work, but this was not in any way a conscious attempt at imitation or any of that.
Right. You were, in one sense, you almost came into this soft focus approach to these Twilight almost by accident. I mean, you thought of it, but you were kind of fiddling around with your camera and realized you could achieve this effect.
Yes. I
And
mean, generally I prize sharp focus and really good depth of field.
yeah,
So working on this series really freed me up to enjoy the benefits of handheld, soft focus, abstract photography.
right.
Honestly, it was very liberating.
Yeah, because you weren't shooting for that perfect focus or that perfect composition. Obviously, you do want a composition
Yes.
here,
Which is
but
why, honestly, which is also a big reason why I shot vertically as opposed to horizontally, because, the clouds, the bands of color are only so wide. And in a vertical, in a portrait mode, as we say in photography, vertical, those bands could stretch across from side to side. But if it was horizontal, they would have faded out, right in the middle of the shot, and it would have lost a certain abstract quality to it.
right. And I note, and I apologize, I haven't read this yet, but there's a nice introduction by someone who I don't know, who's somebody in the art world. Tell me a little bit about Deborah Klochko. Is that
Right, Deborah Klochko. She wrote the essay. I wrote the introduction.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the essay.
She wrote the essay. She is the chief curator and executive director of the Museum of Photographic Arts, which is located in San Diego. And I had met her at an online portfolio review in 2020 when I was still working on the Twilight series, but I had enough images to present to someone in her position. And she really appreciated the work. And the purpose of a portfolio review is to share your work with photography professionals, make some connections. And in this case, I was hoping that A, she would like the work, and B, like the work enough that if I asked her to contribute an essay, she would want to do that. And thankfully, it was yes on both accounts.
Yeah, that's a little bit risky though, isn't it? You're taking your portfolio to a group of people. Maybe you know some of them, maybe you don't know some of them. There's some people from the art world, maybe an art critic, museum people or whatever. And here you go, you just say, here's my stuff. There's a little bit of risk there, isn't there?
There is, but my feeling is if you are committed to being a photographer and you believe in yourself and you believe in your work, it behooves you to share it with people who are in a position, if they appreciate the work and get it as you intend, it behooves you to get it in front, have their eyeballs checking it out, and potentially some really good things can happen, like Deborah Klochko agreeing to write the essay for the book.
Right. And did you get comments or criticism? I mean, constructive criticism when you were showing this portfolio? Did other photographers say, "Hey, interesting, but did you think of this or that?" Or was there that kind of?
This, that's a good question. But on this particular body series, Twilight, I did not get any criticism, I think, as you mean it. But I will say for previous series I've worked on and have gone to portfolio reviews, I have gotten, a range of
Sure.
responses. But here's the thing about portfolio reviews. If you're confident in yourself and your work, when you get feedback, and some of it may not be positive, I have found for me, and I can't believe I'm alone in this, I have found for me that if what one would consider critical, if it resonates with you, if it strikes a chord in you, I would say involuntarily, you got to listen to it. You really, because that's your gut telling you, this person is making a good point. On the other hand, I've had feedback, critical feedback from some curators or editors, whoever, and it didn't resonate with me at all. And that just goes to show that everybody has an opinion, and it's up to you to accept or reject as you see fit. And I've responded both ways, positively to it in terms of that's a good idea, I should follow up on that. Or, you're entitled to your opinion, but it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And one thing that's true, I would say, of art in general, but certainly photography, is photography can when you have like a book like this, or I'm looking at photography, the viewer sees it different. I'm looking at this. I've just seen your book now for a couple of days, and this is kind of my first glance through it and everything, and it's given me something to think about. But I imagine that if I look at it, when I look at it, let's say 6 months from now, I might see it differently.
Yes.
It might change for me. And isn't that kind of a test to how well a photograph holds up over time?
Yes, that's a great point. And, quite frankly, look, Twilight or whatever, it is what it is. It is what it is. And the only thing that could change is your response to it because of,
Right.
maybe you learn something, maybe you experience something in the interim, and that affects how you see the world, including how you see art or photography.
Yep.
And yeah, that's all to the good.
I would imagine that a person who looks at this book, looks at Twilight and sees how you've captured Twilight, I would think the next time I'm outdoor, or anyone would be outdoors at Twilight, I'd probably look at the Twilight a little bit differently, having seen what you've captured here.
Well,
I might even squint or something, or blur my or do something to see if I can see what you captured.
yes, well, it's another good point because I work with a digital pre-press specialist. This is somebody who works with color images all the time, working to get them right, so to speak, for printing, for reproduction. And it was great to work with him. But he told me I worked very intensely with him for about 3 days, getting all the images that appear in the book right. And afterwards, he told me, he said, I was outside early one evening, like a few days after we worked together, and the twilight sky was great. And I thought of your project and how we worked together. And so that's just, an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. His response to the Twilight had been changed.
Yes.
By looking at your art,
and I have friends who know that I've been working on this project for a few years, and they'll text me a photo. It's like, hey, check this out. When it's a sunset or a twilight. It's like, yeah, great. I wish I was there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Pierre. So your book is out. It's been out for maybe a couple of 3 weeks, something like that.
Correct.
And it's available here locally on the Sonoma coast. It's available at the Lodge, I believe.
At the Sea Ranch Lodge General Store, and it's also available at Surf, and I hope to get it at Four-Eyed Frog.
Yep.
And it's also available via my website. If people want to log on to arthurdrooker.com, they can do that.
And I think the Linden Design Gallery is.
Oh, yes, exactly.
They're carrying your book too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
they've been wonderful supporters of my work, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Great. And so for folks who don't happen to be up here on the Sonoma Coast or at Sea Ranch, they can go to your website and order a copy there.
Yes.
If they'd like to. And your website is, help me here, arthurdrooker.com.
That's right. ArthurDrooker.com.
Easy enough. Great. That's fantastic. That's great. Let's this is the other thing I want to comment. This is a very nice volume in terms of the quality of the printing, the binding, and everything. This is a nice looking book that anybody would put on their coffee table and hope that their friends and guests would pick it up. And it's kind of engaging when you see it. It catches your eye. It's a book it's a book you want to pick up and take a look at.
That was all intended.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Arthur, where are you going from this? I assume you've got some other photography projects in the works.
Simultaneously, I've been working on another project, which is completely different from Twilight. And it was kind of fun to work on both simultaneously because they have nothing to do with each other. So here you have Twilight, which is all about color, all about light, and abstract. And the project I'm working on now is 36 views of the Golden Gate Bridge, which
Oh,
is all black and white.
okay.
And it's
Okay.
inspired by the Japanese artist Hokusai, who did 36 views of Mount Fuji.
Uh-huh.
This was in the early 19th century. And he did woodblock prints of
Okay.
various perspectives of Mount Fuji. And in some of them, you would see Mount Fuji up close, and some you would see it from far away, from the perspective of different landscapes. Probably the most famous view of Mount Fuji that he did was with the big curl of a wave, and you see
Right.
Mount Fuji through it.
Yeah, almost
So-
everyone has seen that. Yeah.
So I always loved his work and was very inspired by it. And one day I was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge because I live in Marin County when I'm not up at the Sea Ranch. And I said, look, I said to myself, you know, I love this bridge, and I wonder if there's a way to photograph it in a way that, as much as possible, hasn't been seen before. Is there a way to see perhaps the most photographed bridge,
Right.
or one of the most photographed man-made landmarks in the world? Is there a way to photograph it and see it in a different way than it usually is? So for the past year plus, I've been making photographs and turning them into black and white. And I'd like to think, based on what I've shown to friends, that I am presenting the bridge differently. Even just showing it in black and white is different, because we're all used to seeing those colored postcard views.
Yeah.
And after a while, your eyes become visually numb to the bridge. You know, it's just like, oh yeah, that's a pretty shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. So I made it a point not to photograph it from those postcard views,
Right.
and to see it in black and white, so you really get it in a stripped down way, and the form of the bridge, and also from perspectives like Hokusai did with Mount Fuji. You see it from different perspectives that include different Bay Area environments with the bridge.
Right. Right. Cool.
So you see close-up shots of rivets, and then you see it far away from Alcatraz. So you get it from almost like a 360 around the bay.
Well, we'll look forward to that book in the hopefully not
maybe in a year from now or so.
Maybe in a year. Yeah, fantastic. Well, I do thank you so much. Once again, we've been talking with Arthur Drooker. We are looking at his most recent book of photography called Twilight, which is his investigation of a different way of looking at twilight. Very abstract, a lot of colors, very cool looking. Arthur is a local Bay Area and Sonoma Coast photographer, and he's done a bunch of books. I have
one more thing, if I may add.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to have a book signing at the Lodge on Sunday, October 1st.
Wonderful.
And it's also going to be, that's the time when it's going to be the opening of an exhibition of Twilight at the Lodge.
Okay, so that's at the Lodge on October 1st, and people can come see your work up close and meet you and pick up the book, get a signed copy of the book.
Yes.
Cool.
Great.
Thanks so much, Arthur. I appreciate
thank you.
it. Absolutely.